The first time I saw him, he walked into the boardroom like he owned the place. Crisp suit, perfect hair, eyes that scanned the room with the smug confidence of someone who had never lost a battle because he'd never actually fought one. He clicked his laptop open, smiled at the directors like they were old friends, and said, "It's time for transformation." Those words landed like a gavel. My name is Richard Callahan. I'm 56 years old, and for the past 25 years, I've been the operations director at Halverson Logistics, one of the largest supply chain firms in the Southwest. My life's work has been the system I built here, an operations process so efficient and so resilient that we became the industry standard. We never missed a deadline. We never lost a client. What I created wasn't glamorous, but it worked. And for a quarter of a century, it carried this company on its back. Now I was watching it die in real time. The kid's name was Evan McNeil, fresh MBA from Stanford, hired straight into a vice president role with a starting salary that made most of the department heads choke. He strutted through a glossy PowerPoint filled with buzzwords: real-time analytics, digital dashboard, AI forecasting. He barely paused between slides, like he'd practiced it 100 times in front of a mirror. The board leaned forward, nodding, captivated by the bright colors and big promises. I sat 3 chairs from the end of the long mahogany table, my pen tapping against the pad in front of me. I knew what was happening. The writing had been on the wall from the moment they brought him in. Young blood, new vision, someone to drag us into the digital age. Never mind that our so-called outdated system had kept the company profitable through recessions, pandemics, and a dozen competitors that had come and gone. Never mind that my people trusted it, that our clients trusted it. All that mattered was the shine of something new. When Evan finished his pitch, the chairman leaned back, steepled his fingers, and said, "Impressive." That one word was all it took. The vote was unanimous. My process, 25 years of refinement, testing, iteration, was dismantled in a single afternoon. I kept my face neutral, the way you learn to after decades in boardrooms and warehouses, when men who've never set foot on a loading dock tell you how to run one. My pride screamed, but my voice was steady when I said, "You're the boss." Evan smiled at me then, not a polite smile, not even a gloating one. It was the smile of a man who thought he'd won a war that hadn't even started. He leaned just close enough for only me to hear and whispered, "Dinosaurs always fight innovation." Then he straightened his tie and walked out of the room like a conquering hero. That night, I stayed late in my office. Everyone else had gone home, but I sat at my desk, staring at the binders that held the heart of my process. Physical records, spreadsheets that had been refined into perfection over decades. I thought about carrying them out in a box, just to keep them safe, but in the end, I left them there. Let the kids see what it took to run a real operation. The first cracks appeared less than 2 weeks later. A shipment meant for Denver went missing in the system. Not delayed, missing. The digital dashboard showed it delivered, but the client had nothing. Evan brushed it off at the next staff meeting. "Teething issues," he said. "Every innovation stumbles before it walks." The board accepted that explanation without a second thought. But I knew the difference between a stumble and a fracture. And what I saw in those first discrepancies was a hairline crack in the foundation. Left alone, it would spread. And when it spread, it would bring the whole damn house down. So I sat back, silent, my face calm, my pen tapping slowly against the pad. Let him think he'd won. Let him believe dinosaurs don't know how to fight. Inside, tension coiled in my chest like a spring wound, tight, waiting for the moment when the weight of his own arrogance would snap it loose. The rollout came fast, faster than anyone expected. Overnight, the binders and schedules, the whiteboards covered in figures, the human rhythm of our process, all of it was swept aside and replaced with Evan's glowing dashboards. He called it the new era. Every department head was marched into training sessions where 20-something consultants explained how to read graphs that shifted in real time, how to trust the machine instead of the man beside them. On the surface, it looked impressive. Big numbers updated by the second, colors changing like a video game, buzzers going off when something didn't match the algorithm's forecast. But I knew the difference between looking impressive and being reliable. The veterans knew it too. Men and women who had worked these floors for years pulled me aside in the hallways. They didn't complain loudly, never in front of Evan, but their voices carried the same tone I'd heard from soldiers when new recruits tried to rewrite the rules of survival. "Sir, this doesn't feel right. We're losing track of things we used to see with our own eyes." I listened, nodded, and told them what I always told myself. Document everything. So I did. Like a recon mission, I kept a log. Each miscalculation, every shipment that was delayed, every time the system showed green lights while the floor supervisors were scrambling to fix real problems, I wrote it down. Dates, times, names, evidence. I knew better than to charge in too early. You don't storm the hill until you know where the machine guns are hidden. Evan didn't see cracks. He saw opportunity. At the next board meeting, he clicked through his slides with his usual arrogance. Charts that looked sleek but said nothing useful flashed on the wall while he spun the story. The resistance we're facing, he explained, isn't about the technology. It's about culture. Legacy staff are unwilling to adapt. Then he turned his gaze toward me, just long enough for everyone in that room to know exactly who he meant. The chairman nodded, a few others murmured agreement, and the meeting moved on. I sat with my arms crossed, jaw tight, the taste of iron in my mouth. Years of loyalty, decades of results, all reduced to a smear campaign by a boy who had never unloaded a truck in his life. But I didn't speak. Not yet. 2 weeks later, the damage could no longer be disguised. A major client, one of our oldest, lost 2 deliveries in a row. The first time they were patient. The second time, they sent a letter threatening to take their business elsewhere. I watched the executives around the table pale when the letter was read aloud. This was money, reputation, everything we'd built. Evan leaned back in his chair and gave a little shrug. "Short-term pain for long-term gain," he said, as if losing millions was just the price of progress. I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth might crack. He had no idea what kind of fire he was playing with. To him, it was theory, models, case studies from his MBA program. To me, it was flesh and blood. Every client lost meant families laid off, houses foreclosed, lives disrupted. But he didn't see that. He only saw the gleam of his own ambition. At night, I would sit in my office after everyone left, staring at the glowing dashboards that promised control, but delivered chaos. My old binders sat untouched on the shelf behind me. I ran my fingers across their spines sometimes, remembering the years it had taken to perfect what now lay abandoned. Pride is a dangerous thing, but pride built on results is hard to kill. And mine was bleeding every day. This circus continued. Then, late one Thursday night, as I was finishing notes in my log, an email appeared in my inbox. The subject line was simple: "You need to see this." It was from Martin Lopez, a mid-level manager who'd been with us 12 years. Attached was a screenshot of the new system. I opened it, leaned closer, and felt my stomach tighten. The dashboard was showing inventory we didn't have. Not just miscounted items, phantom stock, numbers conjured out of thin air, feeding into forecasts, shaping reports, lying to everyone who trusted them. The first real crack in Evan's empire. And I knew it wouldn't be the last. The screenshot Martin sent me was only the beginning. Once I knew what to look for, I started peeling back the layers of Evan's shining system, and what I found made my blood run cold. Numbers that didn't exist were feeding into forecasts. Orders that were never placed showed up as revenue streams. Inventory appeared in the dashboards like ghosts. Whole pallets logged as stocked and ready when the warehouses were empty. On paper, we looked like we were soaring. In reality, we were bleeding out day by day. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I pulled the old binders from my shelves and laid them open on my desk, comparing line by line. My process had always been straightforward. Raw numbers, confirmed receipts, human signatures. The system wasn't glamorous, but it was real, and it had never lied to me. Every cross-check between my records and his digital mirage told the same story. Losses stacking up like sandbags against a collapsing levee. Meanwhile, Evan grew louder. He invited a journalist from a local business magazine to tour the operation, feeding her lines about revolutionizing legacy industries and bringing 21st century efficiency to a dinosaur sector. The article hit the press with his face splashed across the front page, arms folded, chin lifted like some conquering general. The board framed it as free publicity. I clipped it, slid it into my file, and kept my mouth shut. Evidence. Always evidence. But evidence doesn't stop trucks. One morning, 3 rigs rolled into a client's yard in Dallas. Empty. The digital system had assured everyone the cargo was ready and loaded. Drivers showed up to locked warehouse doors and paperwork that proved nothing. The client called me personally, voice shaking with fury. "Richard, we've tolerated your boy's experiments long enough. If this isn't fixed, we'll see you in court." That was the kind of call you don't forget. It carried the weight of years of trust turning into ash in a single conversation. 2 days later, we were in a closed-door meeting. The atmosphere was thick, silent but charged. The board waited for Evan to explain. He straightened his tie and launched into the same defense I'd heard a dozen times. "We're experiencing resistance from legacy staff who refuse to adapt. The numbers are clear, but old habits are dragging us down." He glanced my way, then let a smirk twist across his face. Boomers resist change. I felt the heat in my chest, the old soldier's instinct to rise and put him in his place. But I didn't move. Not until he finished spinning his excuses, waving charts on the screen that meant nothing, graphs that climbed in directions untethered from reality. The directors nodded uncertainly, eyes flicking between him and me, caught between the dazzle of his presentation and the weight of their own unease. Finally, I leaned forward, folded my hands on the table, and spoke for the first time. My voice was steady, calm, the way it always was in a firefight when panic would kill you faster than bullets. "Show us the raw numbers," I said. "No dashboards, no filters, just truth." The room went still. Evan froze, his mouth half open, his eyes flicking from me to the board and back again. He laughed, a nervous little chuckle, and started clicking through his slides, talking faster now, trying to bury my demand under more color-coded graphs. But he never once pulled up the raw figures. He couldn't. For the first time, I saw the directors shift in their seats, uneasy, their confidence shaken. The cracks weren't just in the system anymore. They were in the room, in the faces around that table, in the fragile armor of the boy who thought he'd conquered an empire. And I knew, sooner or later, those cracks would burst the dam wide open. The first email came on a Monday morning, short, casual, like nothing was wrong. "Hey Richard, quick question. Could you walk me through some of the quirks in your old system? Just want to cross-reference a few things." He signed it with his usual bravado, Evan McNeil, VP of Innovation, as though a fancy title could cover the cracks spreading under his feet. I read it once, closed it, and went back to my notes. I had nothing to say to him. By Wednesday, another arrived. This one carried less swagger. "Some of the numbers aren't matching up. Could you send me a few of your old files?" Just to double-check I didn't answer, I logged the message, added it to my growing dossier, and kept documenting. Every failure, every discrepancy, every lawsuit threat, page after page, date after date. I wasn't building a journal anymore. I was building ammunition. The board had started to show cracks of their own. They didn't admit it outright, not yet. But I saw the restless shifting in meetings, the side conversations in the hall. Clients were furious, vendors were pulling back, and the threat of litigation hung over us like a storm cloud. Evan's presentations no longer drew applause. His dashboards were starting to look less like brilliance and more like smoke and mirrors. His suits still cost more than most people's monthly rent, but now they were marred with sweat stains by the time the meetings ended. His voice carried a tremor he tried to disguise as passion. And still the emails came. By the end of the month, they had shifted from casual to pleading. "Richard, I need your help. The system is pulling phantom inventory again. Please, just a few of your binders, a walkthrough, anything. Something isn't adding up." The arrogance was gone, replaced with desperation, typed out at 2 a.m. I ignored them all. Silence was a weapon, and patience was its edge. Then came the call. It was nearly midnight when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I almost let it go to voicemail, but the number flashing on the screen belonged to one of our senior financial officers, a man who rarely lost composure. His voice on the line was sharp with panic. "Richard, the system just collapsed. It's showing assets that don't exist. Millions gone. On paper, we're flush, but in reality, we've got nothing. It's a black hole." I sat there in the dark, listening as he laid out the disaster. Orders promised to clients that were never placed, warehouse shelves standing empty, while the dashboards claimed they were overflowing, invoices stacked on transactions that had never happened. It wasn't just sloppy now. It was collapse. The next morning, Evan stood in front of the board with his tie crooked and his eyes ringed with exhaustion. He rambled about temporary glitches, promised patches, swore the algorithms just needed time to learn. But no one in that room believed him anymore. The veneer had cracked. Behind his polished teeth and quick hands was a man drowning. That afternoon, another email landed in my inbox. The subject line was stripped bare of confidence. "Please, I need your help." The message was even worse. "I can't make sense of the numbers. I don't know where it went wrong. If you still have your old binders, please, send them. We can fix this together." I read it slowly, twice, then leaned back in my chair. The silence of my office was steady, calm, like the stillness before a storm breaks. I let him sweat through the afternoon before finally typing my reply. "You replaced my system. You own the results. See you at the board meeting." Then I hit send. The boardroom was silent when I walked in that morning. No jokes, no idle chatter, no small talk about golf or vacations. Just the shuffle of papers and the weight of dread hanging in the air. At the head of the table sat the chairman, jaw tight, eyes on the stack of folders I carried. Evan was already there, hunched over his laptop, hair slightly unkempt, dark circles carved under his eyes. For the first time since I met him, he looked less like a golden boy and more like a cornered animal. I placed my file on the polished wood, opened it with deliberate calm, and began. No theatrics, no raised voice, just the steady rhythm of a soldier giving a briefing. These are screenshots of the dashboard as presented over the past 3 months. Notice the phantom inventory entries, numbers with no corresponding receipts, no warehouse confirmations. Here are the client complaints, dated and signed. Here are invoices for shipments promised, but never fulfilled. And here, I said, as I laid out the binders, are the same dates tracked through the old system. Real numbers, real confirmations, the truth. The directors leaned forward, murmuring as they scanned the evidence. Some exchanged uneasy looks. I kept going, each page another blow, each chart another nail in the coffin. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even triumphant. I was clinical, precise, methodical. Like an autopsy on a corpse everyone in the room already knew was dead. Evan cleared his throat, trying to regain control. Yes, there were issues, he said quickly, but every innovation requires short-term pain for long-term gain. We're on the verge of a breakthrough. The algorithms are adjusting. We can't abandon progress just because of a few missteps. His words hung there, empty and desperate. I didn't interrupt him. I just slid another paper forward, showing the financial officer's own report. Losses piling up at a rate no company could sustain. The numbers didn't suggest short-term pain. They screamed long-term ruin. One of the board members leaned back, pale. "We're hemorrhaging," he muttered. The chairman's eyes shifted to Evan. "Is this true?" he asked flatly. Evan stammered, clicking through his laptop, pulling up more colorful graphs, more excuses. But the illusion had shattered. The board no longer saw brilliance in his slides. They saw deception. I closed my folder and folded my hands, waiting. The silence was heavier than any speech I could deliver. Finally, the chairman spoke. His voice was measured, cold. "You're finished." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the door opened, and 2 men from security stepped in. Evan tried to protest, but his words tumbled out in half-sentences, lost under the sound of his chair scraping back. They took him by the arms, not roughly, but firmly, and led him from the room. His laptop was left behind, screen glowing with the empty dashboard that had been his empire. His emails stopped that day. Forever. The rest was aftermath. The board turned to me, their tone shifting from skepticism to apology. They asked if I could restore the old system, stabilize the bleeding, rebuild what had been broken. I nodded once. There was no pride in it, no gloating, just duty. Within weeks, the binders were back, the warehouses humming with order, the clients reassured. Slowly, stability returned. Evan's downfall spread beyond these walls. The same journalist who once praised him wrote a follow-up, tearing apart his innovation. His LinkedIn article about revolutionizing old industries became a punchline across the sector. Recruiters stopped calling. His name became a warning whispered in boardrooms. Don't put blind faith in shiny toys or untested visionaries. When the meeting adjourned, I stepped outside into the cool air. I lit a cigarette, something I hadn't done in years, and let the smoke curl into the sky. My hands didn't shake. My heart was steady. The gavel had fallen, and the case was closed. Betrayal isn't just in marriages or battlefields. It's in boardrooms too, when ambition blinds, when truth is ignored. Systems, people, nations They all collapse the same way, not from outside attacks, but from arrogance within. The faces change, the weapons change, but betrayal and revenge remain eternal. And when the gavel falls, it falls for everyone.